Inside of Landsberg Prison, in the years following the Second World War, there were over 200 war criminals who were led at the steps of the gallows for their date with the US Army executioner and hangman. On the 7th of June 1951, there was a barbaric member of the Einsatzgruppe, a commander of the Nazi death squads, who would be sent crashing through the trapdoor of the execution structure because of his terrifying crimes. Erich Naumann was a senior member of the SS, and along with a number of other death squad commanders, he was condemned to death for his actions in the slaughter of thousands of people. His men would follow the advances of the German army, and they would round up groups of people, force them to dig their own graves, before his Einsatzgruppe pulled the trigger, executing and shooting them in cold blood. Naumann was a ruthless and barbaric man, and he tried to claim at his trial that he was simply just following the orders given to him by his superior officer, by the evil Reinhard Heydrich. But this was rejected, and Naumann was left swinging from the gallows, with his own life being brought to a sharp end. But what other crimes did he commit? To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. On the 29th of April 1905, inside of the town of Meissen in Saxony, Erich Naumann was born. It is considered that Naumann had a relatively normal early life and upbringing, and that he was given a relatively comfortable schooling. His parents would probably have never believed what a monster and beast he would later become. At the age of 16, Naumann left school and he took a job inside of a local business in his hometown. But he was like many people inside of Germany in the late 1920s, attracted to more extreme political groups, and Naumann was in particular attracted to the politics of the Nazi Party, who were led by their speaker Adolf Hitler. He was in his mid-20s and he would join the Nazi Party, and inside of the Nazi groups, Naumann would be provided with work, promotion and better pay. And of course he would go from being a salesman to a ruthless killer of men, women and children. In 1933 he joined the Braunschers, the SA or Sturmabteilung, and these were the bodyguards of Adolf Hitler, and they were thuggish brutes who were tasked with disrupting the meetings of communists and other opposition political groups, and the SA went further, arranging street wars and fights with the Nazis' enemies. Naumann got involved in the chaos and the group, but over a period of time the SA became more of a private army, and their membership numbers were huge, and they actually became a threatening force to Hitler. Because of this, Hitler then ordered a purge, and he ordered his SS, the Schutzstaffel, to purge the SA, the brown shirts, and in this, his close friend and head of the SA, Ernst Röhm, would be slaughtered during the Night of the Long Knives. This led to the executions of many prominent SA members. Naumann, being a lower-ranking officer in the group, survived, and he then defected to become part of the SS, and specifically became an officer in the police, and in 1935 he was moved to join the SD, the Sicherheitsdienst. The SD was the intelligence sector of the SS led by Reinhard Heydrich, a man referred to by Hitler as the man with the iron heart. Naumann, as an SD officer or spy in a sense, was now involved in gathering intelligence and information about those who were the enemies of the Nazis, and this led to the Gestapo rounding up many people who were then sent to early concentration camps such as Dachau. The SD worked closely with the Gestapo and other groups, and Naumann remained in the group for many years and was promoted a number of times, rising to the rank of SS Brigade Führer. But his involvement with Reinhard Heydrich and the SS would lead during the Second World War to Naumann to take more of a hands-on approach to the crimes of the Nazis. The Einsatzgruppe were a collection of paramilitary death squads which were established by the SS and the Nazis, and during World War II they carried out the exterminations of millions of people. As the German army pushed into new lands and established their occupation, the Einsatzgruppe would come in and follow, and they would sort out and gather large swathes of the civilian population. They sorted out those who were to become slave labourers, and those who were to be killed were marched to the edge of the settlements, where they were ordered to dig huge pits at gunpoint. These people were digging their own graves. After this was done, the victims would then be led into the pits, and they would be either shot by a firing squad or by a lone executioner who walked inside the pit with his pistol, firing a shot into the back of the neck. These victims were told to lie down on the bodies of those who had gone before, and they were then executed. It was industrial mass killing and slaughter, and in this way millions across Eastern Europe were killed at the hands of the Einsatzgruppe. Erich Naumann was one of the most trusted members of the SS, and as soon as the Second World War broke out in Europe, he was given command of Einsatzgruppe 6, and during the invasion of Poland, his forces would round up 6,000 people, and they would shoot them in the manner outlined earlier. Most of the people who became victims to Naumann's executioners were priests, teachers, and those members of the Polish intelligentsia, as well as political activists. Erich Naumann continued to work in the Einsatzgruppe, and he was made the chief of Einsatzgruppe B in November 1941. He was now in charge of more groups of death squads, and his forces shot more people. After the Germans invaded the Soviet Union during Operation Barbarossa, the Einsatzgruppe shot huge numbers, thousands every single day. Erich Naumann claimed in November 1941 to his superior Adolf Eichmann that his men had shot in the region of Smolensk 17,256 people. His group mostly used gunshot to execute their victims, but they occasionally utilised gas vans. By December 1942, his own Einsatzgruppe men had executed 134,298 people at least. Let's remember that Erich Naumann was just one of many commanders too. He continued to also witness many of the killings himself, and he was not a pen pusher stuck behind a desk, but instead he went right to the front and witnessed much of the shooting himself. This gained him a notorious reputation, and the head of the SS, Heinrich Himmler, was impressed by his disastrous work that he was doing, and because of this, Naumann was then made the commander of the security police and the SD in the occupied Netherlands. Whilst there, he continued to slaughter, torture and execute, and did use groups of executioners against the Dutch people. However, as the Second World War went badly for the Germans, following the Battle of Stalingrad, some of the SS members and higher-ranking members of the group began to consider their futures. They knew they would be wanted for war crimes, and Himmler would advise his top men, like Naumann, to gain false identities and to try and avoid detection at the end of the war. But Erich Naumann fell into the hands of the Allies, and his crimes were revealed during his interrogation. He was brought to a war crimes trial alongside other members of the Einsatzgruppe, and he was sat with a number of other commanders. In the judgment at the trial it was said, "In this case the defendants are not simply accused of planning or directing wholesale killings through channels. They are not charged with sitting in an office hundreds and thousands of miles away from the slaughter. It is asserted with particularity that these men were in the field actively superintending, controlling, directing, and taking active part in the bloody harvest." Naumann and his fellow defendants were said to have been responsible for over 1 million people, and he claimed he was just following orders which were given to him. Naumann also said that he believed that the destructive and deadly work he was doing was not wrong, and he said that, I quote, "No, Your Honour, I consider the decree to be right, because it was part of our aim of our war, and therefore it was a necessity." He believed he had been assigned to do a job executing civilians, and said he had no issues with doing this. The courtroom asked for further information, saying, "Then the tribunal will accept from your answer that you saw nothing wrong with the orders, even though it did involve the killing of defenceless human beings. That is what we draw from your answer." Erich Naumann replied with, "Yes, Your Honour," giving confirmation to his work, and he had no guilt about the fact he had overseen the slaughter of well over 100,000 people inside of the occupied lands. It was no surprise when the death sentence was passed against Erich Naumann, and he was sent to Landsberg Prison to await the date of his execution, and the former Einsatzgruppe Commander actually remained on death row for roughly 3 years. It was on the 7th of June 1951, a short while before midnight, that Erich Naumann was informed that it was time for his execution. He made the short walk out of his prison cell, accompanied by many American military policemen and a priest. The priest was there to provide spiritual guidance in his final moments, and he was led into the courtyard of Landsberg Prison, where the gallows was found. Erich Naumann had his identity confirmed at the bottom of the steps, and he was then helped up the gallows steps, as his arms had been secured behind him. When he got to the top of the steps, the priest recorded his final words, and the executioner took possession of him. He ensured his arms were tied tightly behind his back, and then his legs were tied together, and he was shuffled over the trapdoor. Naumann then had a final photograph taken as he was stood on the gallows, and when everything was ready, the former Einsatzgruppe Commander, was sent crashing through the trapdoor, and a black cap had been placed over his head. Erich Naumann was a brutal and barbaric commander of the Einsatzgruppe, and he was someone who had no problem with carrying out executions and deaths of so many people on the Eastern Front. He showed absolutely no remorse, and for his crimes, at the age of 46, the ruthless Naumann was sent crashing through the gallows to his death. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.